right. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Rematriating Stolen Land, Bringing History and Culture Forward, our Indigenous Reparations webinar. We have a really great panel lined up for you all, and we're going to begin with presentations from each of our speakers, and then we're going to have a few announcements to make, and we'll hear about the Massachusetts legislative agenda. And then we're going to open up to a Q&A. So for now, hold your questions. I'm also going to ask if you put the questions in the chat, and I'll read them out to our speakers just so we have time to get through as many as possible. So I'm going to start by introducing our speakers. First, we're going to hear from Melissa Ferretti, who is chairwoman of the Herring Pond Wampanoag, and then we'll hear from Kat Harrelson, who's an environmental analyst with the Community Land and Water Coalition, and then last but not least, Tia Pocknett, who's a teacher at the Weetumuw School. So we'll start with Melissa, whenever you're ready.
All right. I'm just trying to share my screen, but it is not up in front of me. Oddly enough, I don't know why. Hold on one moment. Sorry about that.
No worries.
This again. Share. Here we go.
Perfect.
Can you see that okay?
Yes.
All right. So the slideshow, sorry, from the beginning. I won't take long here, so I'll start with an introduction. So good evening. Natasuis, Melissa Ferretti, New Tomas, Siquanamakwa Paquet. Hope I said that right, Tia. Tia is the language teacher. So I'm the chairwoman of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. I'm honored to be here amongst you all, and I appreciate you having me. I cannot see my cursor. Let me forward, so I'm just try this. So we're here tonight to talk about stolen land, and we certainly know quite a bit about that at Herring Pond Wampanoag and the Wampanoag Nation. Of course, thousands of years of stewardship. We know since time immemorial, Wampanoag people have roamed, occupied, lived, and died and survived on these lands, and we are inseparable from the land. So it would be impossible for me to tell you our story without at first sharing a quick map of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribal homelands, set aside in the mid to early 17th century by the Plymouth colony officials, was three separate parcels. Of course, we note that this is a post-contact map after the Pilgrims arrived. As you know, all of what you see on this map at one time was Wampanoag Nation and still is today. But after the time of the arrival of the Pilgrims, these are the parcels that you see here on this map that were set aside for the tribe. So it was about 3,000 acres total. The blue parcels you see, the largest one, about 2,600 acres, was the Great Lot. This you see here. The overlay portion on the stripe section is what we would call common lands. Those were also tribal homelands that were set aside as common. And then you come down below here at Great Herring Pond, we have the Meeting House lot. That was at one time 200 acres. And you come over here down the bottom and you're into Bourne at this point. And this parcel here was the Herring River lot. It's known to us today it's been known to us as the Valley. And we still have families that live on those properties today. That was about 400 acres. Of the 3,000 plus acres that the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe once had, we have about 7 acres remaining to the tribe. Our meeting house sits on 0.43 of an acre of what was one time a 200-acre parcel. So this is just another map. Of course, it's a combined ancient and modern map, and it just illustrates the vicinity of the first settlement, it says, on Cape Cod. And it also notes here the 3 spots you see here are the 3 meeting houses that were built for the tribe over time. So self-determined and preservation of land and our cultural heritage today. You know, everything we do, we talk about the power of place. And since the the lots, the 1850 and the 1870 allotments. Of course, our land's greatly diminished. As I said, we have about 7 acres that is belongs to the tribe today. One of those being a parcel in Cedarville that is a 6 acre parcel that was returned to the tribe in 2019 by the town, right? First time in history that the town of Plymouth had returned land to the tribe. Um, is that 6 acre parcel, which contains 8 burials as well. So that was where our work to get land rematriated back to the tribe. And we've been working very hard through today to do the same. Yet we know that we face many challenges in relation to such, as you'll hear from some of our other speakers after I am finished, in relation to especially some of the land on our great lot. I put this up here because Burying Hill is one of the initiatives that we've been working on currently. And this is an example of a parcel that was long forgotten, and it no longer belongs to us, yet it should. And it hopefully someday will be returned to the tribe. But this is current day. We're working on this. We had just finished last week a ground penetrating survey, and we did certainly find graves on this burying hill that the town did not even know were present. They knew it was Burying Hill, and we knew it was called that for years, but nobody was actually sure if there were burials there. So we took the initiative to find out, and we do hope that one day this can be returned to the Wampanoag people as it rightly should. That's just one of the efforts we're working on now. So Aboriginal rights, we talk about what is Aboriginal rights. Usufruct rights. It combines two property rights of usuf and fructus, right? It refers to the right to use something directly without damaging or altering it. And it refers to enjoying the fruits of the property being used, that is, to profit for real. This says for real property by leasing it, selling it, crops, charging admission to it, or similar, right? But this just means we have a right to the land. We, as Native people, can enter land, and we have an easement right by birth. It's inherent. So this is just an Aboriginal rights proclamation that speaks of such. So again, we're here to talk, I know, about the theft of tribal homelands. And it's not too hard to determine that from 3,000 acres, 7 acres remaining, not all of that was, of course, sold or given away by us. Many of the titles that we see are clouded, and with the right amount of assistance and support, we hope to one day uncover some of those. But being a small tribal community like Herring Pond, it can often be hard to do the work necessary to find out what exactly happened to our properties and how did, these non-native people acquire them in the first place without our consent. So public access is certainly another issue that comes along with these issues that go with stolen land. If you cannot access the places where you gather your food and where you fish and you hunt, then of course it's a detriment to the tribe. We know this very well now. As of just last week, my son frequently hunts Miles Standish State Forest. They are out there, of course, another parcel of land that no longer belongs to the Wampanoag people, and they're doing prescribed burns out there. But what they don't realize is that they're burning land that our people roam and rely on. My son's his blind and everything was destroyed because of this work they're doing. So I won't get too much into John Milton Earl for you today, but I did want to just share a piece of this from the after the allotment. And John Milton Earl explained that the allotment was the most devastating federal policy to ever happen to Native people. And so the reservation lands that were formerly covered with wood, it had all been cut off in pitch pine, and no new growth had attained sufficient size. So he talked about the land remaining to the tribe after the allotment, it remained, he said that it remained, it was practically useless, were his words. And to Native people, there is no land that is useless. We are the land. Here I'm just sharing over time. These are just newspaper clippings from early 1800s, late 1700s, early 1800s that talk about the Native people in this region fighting for their rights to the land and the fish and the herring. This one here, think their rights are being violated, the Herring Pond Indians. There's many, many, many of these between Mashpee, Aquina, and Herring Pond over and over in the newspapers where the land has been stolen, where we were arguing that our rights were being violated. Nonetheless, here we are with 7 acres remaining. Just a quick workshop we did on the Cape Cod Canal showing that we're still here and that we do honor our traditions and our foodways. Land back, again, Dinah Path. This was an effort that was led by the tribal council and the citizens of Herring Pond to have the cemetery returned to us. It was a challenge, and full ownership finally did come back to the tribe, but it was not a simple process. If I had more time, I could share that with you tonight. So Herring Pond Reservation, and this is true, if we take a second to remember how beautiful Mother Nature is, we just might treat it differently. I'm trying to go up here. I'm trying to stop share, but it won't let me do it. So there's my slides. I just wanted to share just a little bit of our history and talk a little bit about some of the challenges we are having today. We have more speakers this evening, so I'm going to stop there and wait for questions. And sorry I had to go so fast, but we are on limited time. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really, really wonderful. All right, I'm now gonna turn it over to Catherine Harrelson.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Tia. Thank you to the attendees here tonight. Thank you to Mass Peace Action. I'm really honored to be here tonight. Community Land and Water Coalition is a grassroots organization that works to defend people and the environment. We're here tonight as messengers of a process going on in southeastern Massachusetts right now that is in the process of land theft of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. And I'm here tonight simply to reiterate and to speak to what's going on and hope to share this information with you. I'm going to start by playing a video that we helped produce that I think we produced it last week for a court hearing on Friday the 2nd, but I think it does a really good job of summing up what's going on. So with your permission, I'll have Grace play it if that's okay with everyone.
Today, we are here at Plymouth County Superior Court in solidarity and in support of the traditional Indigenous stewards of 71 Hedges Pond Road in Cedarville, the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. In particular, we are here to ask the court to acknowledge the egregious harm already done to the Herring Pond tribe by first allowing this land at 71 Hedges Pond Road, a parcel within the traditional Great Lot allotment, to be taken out of conservation status and instead sold to Eric Pontiff, or EJ Pontiff, one of the leading sand mining operators in southeastern Massachusetts, for only $1. The land itself has an estimated $12 million in sand and gravel to be sold for concrete, asphalt, and manufacturing, as well as priceless cultural and ecological value, with the site listed as a priority habitat for rare species and a globally rare pine barrens forest. Now, as we see in this video taken on April 25th, 2025, the land that previously held mature pine barrens habitat has been clear-cut and is in the process of being stripped for excavation, digging 90-foot deep holes across the 33-acre property. This land is sacred to the Herring Pond tribe, containing ancestral burial remains, cultural heritage, and both animal and natural relatives that no amount of economic development can compensate for. As you can see from this video, not only has this land already been desecrated against the wishes of the Herring Pond tribe, some of the plaintiffs in this case, but also the work of the project was accelerated in direct contradiction to local residents and constituents' wishes. Beginning in 2024, Plymouth received multiple requests to press pause on the project for further archaeological research to be done, and instead has chosen to violate laws protecting sacred Indigenous burial grounds and ancestral heritage, including violation of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, or NAGPRA, as well as the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, or UNDRIP. Despite many reasonable requests by Chairwoman Melissa Ferretti, Chairman Brian Whedon, and other Indigenous leaders and voices to conduct an archaeological study at 71 Hedges Pond Road due to the concern for burial remains of their ancestors at this site, Plymouth instead allowed and enabled E.J. Pontiff to move ahead with this project. Both the Select Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals voted for this project to move forward, again in direct contradiction to the many constituents that have packed recent public meetings, with Indigenous voices leading the opposition to this project. In addition to the ongoing colonial harm towards the traditional stewards of this land and their cultural heritage, multiple decisions by the town of Plymouth to enable this project to move forward also made the town complicit in putting many of its constituents, neighbors, and local businesses at greater risk from climate hazards in the interest of short-term profit for a few. Mature pine barren forest land is Plymouth County's greatest defense against climate hazards like extreme precipitation, extreme heat, and poor air quality. If this land were to be reforested under Indigenous land stewardship, then forest land ecosystems could act like a natural sponge, filtering and absorbing rainwater and using their root ecosystems to recharge the aquifer underground, while also helping to prevent the town from damage from erosion and mudslides. In acting as a natural air conditioner that take up groundwater and evapotranspirate cool air, mature pine barrens in turn also help to protect the surrounding community from the impacts of extreme heat, listed as one of the most urgent and increasing threats to Plymouth County, as stated in the 2023 Resilient Mass Plan. Finally, it is important to acknowledge that sand mining at 71 Hedges Pond Road and other properties in Plymouth County is a significant environmental justice and public health concern. Silica dust, the fine particulate matter that sand mining development mobilizes, is a known carcinogen. Once the forest is clear-cut and silica dust is exposed to the air, E.J. Pontiff, the Select Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals are all complicit in making a known carcinogen airborne and a health hazard to surrounding communities in Plymouth. Under the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act, or MEPA, as updated in recent climate legislation, any development project that is anticipated to exacerbate air pollution within 5 miles of an environmental justice community requires extensive community engagement and consultation prior to breaking ground. Allowing this project to move forward in direct contradiction to Indigenous voices and to the reasonable request for an archaeological study is in direct violation of the tribal environmental justice community in Plymouth County, and therefore in violation of the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act, in addition to violation of NAGPRA and UNDRIP, as mentioned earlier. The plaintiffs in the case Linda Coombs et al. Versus Town of Plymouth et al. Urge the court to acknowledge the harm already caused at 71 Hedges Pond Road and to immediately halt all further development of sand mining at the site. In addition to pursuing an archaeological study in partnership and consultation with local tribes at 71 Hedges Pond Road, as long requested, we urge the court and Plymouth County to ensure that no further sand mining development is allowed to move forward before proposed sites have independent archaeological studies performed in partnership with the Herring Pond tribe, the traditional stewards of this land. While the damage to this land cannot be ignored, the opportunity remains to reforest this property under the leadership of Indigenous land stewards. Today is an opportunity to turn towards repair and reconciliation.
Thank you for playing that, Grace.
Yeah.
So for a little bit of context for that video, what I'm here to talk about today is a modern day example of land theft of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. This is specifically taking place, what I'm about to talk about, at a parcel known as 71 Hedges Pond Road in Plymouth, in the Cedarville section of Plymouth. Next slide. So that red dot in the center shows the location of 71 Hedges Pond Road as it appears on Google Maps right now. It was forested as of January of this year. Next slide. So as you can see from this map, which is Melissa's map, this parcel is located within the Herring Pond Wampanoag Great Lot, the 2,600 acres located within Plymouth. This is part of the Great Lot. And if I may, I'm going to quote from the Herring Pond Wampanoag website, if I may. The Herring Pond Wampanoag are the only tribe to have had lands in the town of Plymouth and Bourne allotted to us, and we have never ceded I'll use they, allotted to them, and they have never ceded their ancestral rights to these homelands by treaty or sale. The website goes on to say that they know from the Earl report, which Melissa mentioned and referenced, state has large funds drawn from the sale of lands, which would have been theirs. I'm going to read from their website again. The Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe has long known that their historical lands have been subject to externally imposed processes intended to legitimize the taking of our lands and to convey the idea that such processes are an inevitable aspect of European and Euro-American conquest. So what I'm about to describe to you is a modern day going on right now, the legitimization of the taking of their lands. Next slide. So this is a brief history of the transactions that have occurred. In 1977, the town of Plymouth acquired 175 acres for a future landfill. In the 1980s, they abandoned their plans for the landfill. In 1993, the town of Plymouth voted to put the land in the custody of the Conservation Commission as the Cedarville Conservation Area, an area, and today, even on maps today, this parcel is mapped as the Cedarville Conservation Area. However, the conservation restriction was never recorded on this land, so there was no legal protections for it. And around the time of 2018, the town of Plymouth went looking for parcels to develop so that they could increase their tax holdings within the town. They developed a foundation called the Plymouth Foundation, which was specifically formed as a nonprofit organ, a quasi-governmental institution to convert town-held lands into commercial property development so that the town can increase its tax base. So as a result of this, in 2018, the Plymouth Director of Planning and Development put forth a town meeting warrant article to rezone these 175 acres as the Cedarville Enterprise District. That includes parcels in the Great Lot. That included 71 Hedges Pond Road. So this passed a town meeting because a lot of people didn't understand what they were actually voting for, and some people have spoken out that they regret their vote on that. So after that rezoning passed, in 2018, the select board moved part of the 175 acres from the control of the Conservation Commission to the select board. Then the select board sold it to the Plymouth Economic Development Foundation for $1. The Plymouth Economic Foundation in 2025 turned around and sold it to a developing company called E.J. Pontiff Real Estate for the sum of $2 million. Actually, I'm sorry, I believe it was $4 million, with the $2 million going directly to the town. Then on around February of 2025, just 3 months ago, E.J. Pontiff Real Estate started demolishing the site before they even held the title to the property. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side is, I think that image was captured in March of 2025. That's the beginning of the destruction. As I said, of January 2025, this parcel is completely forested, and the land is now stripped bare of trees, and it's been stumped, and it's beginning to be sand mined. We know through public statements made by the town that through deep research, the town is aware that the parcel is part of the Great Lot. Statements made by the Plymouth Economic Foundation and by the chair of the select board, they are aware that this parcel is within the Great Lot. Next slide, please. So these are the actions that have been taken by the community. A great coalition has formed around this to take action against the demolition of this parcel. I said December 2024, it might have been November 2024. The Cedarville Steering Committee voted unanimously not to support this project. On December 4th, Herring Pond Wampanoag Chairwoman Melissa Ferretti submitted a letter to the Plymouth Planning Board stating that the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe had consultation rights under UN TRIP, and at the very bare minimum that she requested an archaeological study to be performed on this parcel. Unfortunately, the planning board voted in favor of the project, despite public opposition that was apparent. Every single person who spoke at the planning board meeting was against this project. In February of 2024, the community made statements at every single select board meeting against this project. Letters to the editor went in. On February 18th, Chairwoman Ferretti issued a letter to Governor Healy asking for intervention, a cease and desist, and an archaeological study. On February 18th, there was a determination by Mashpee Wampanoag Tribal Councilman and Tribal Historic Preservation Officer David Whedon that an archaeological study is required, so no sensitive or sacred sites are impacted. In February of 2024, Community Land and Water Coalition appealed the building permit and requested a cease and desist. We were denied on February 18th for the cease and desist. In March 17th, a letter was issued from the Narragansett Tribal Historic Preservation Officer requesting consultation with the Federal Highway Administration due to their interest in the site for historical reasons. On April 7th, there was a public hearing at the Plymouth Zoning Board of Appeals on our request for an appeal of the permits. The room was packed. There was over an hour of testimony against the project, including by several members of the Indigenous community and tribal leaders. The picture on the right features Troy Currents, medicine man for the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe, and many other Indigenous speakers appeared at the hearing and spoke about consultation rights and the need for a cease and desist and the need for an archaeological study on this parcel. On May 2nd, there was a Superior Court hearing in Plymouth County on an Article 97 case brought forth by Community Land and Water Coalition and a request for an injunction. And we're still waiting on the results of that case. Next slide, please. We've been holding standouts all the time since February. Like I said, the community has really come out against this project. They understand the implications for Indigenous land rights. They understand the implications for their community if this is allowed to happen. They understand that this is land theft going on and nobody likes it. Everyone I talk to is against it. It's a terrible, terrible project and a terrible thing for the community. Next slide. We have received local media coverage from this, mostly from the Cape Cod Times and the Bourne Enterprise, as well as a lot of coverage from the Plymouth Independent as well. And I think I'm going to end there, and we'll come back to ways that we can take action.
Great, thank you. All right, so next we'll turn it over to Tia.
Waniwanong na tasuis Tia Pocknett no Thomas Migama but Pone na Pamatamuwonk na Tai Masipiat. So my name is Tia Pocknett. My blood and bones are from Mi'kma'ki or Mi'kmaq land in Nova Scotia, Canada, and I was adopted by a Mashpee Wampanoag man, and I've lived in Mashpee my entire life. My son's Mashpee, and you know, I think earlier what I would like to say or kind of like make a point to, you know, Melissa, is that when she says the land is inseparable from us, that is truly something that we believe in. The word for like my land, natakim, and there's a special marker, a letter in that phrase that says that I am the land and the land is me. We have that sound. And that's true with our, you know, our land, our water, we are connected. So at the Weetumuw School, it's a school that has a Montessori. We use Montessori, but we also fuse it with Wampanoag language and culture. And we serve with children ages 3 through 6. And we focus on culture-based and land-based education practices. Students spend a good amount of time outdoors. We walk trails that our ancestors made long ago. We perform ceremonies in these places. We forage for berries. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. I re-edited my slides. So don't worry. Yeah, I was like, I get tricky there. Don't worry. So this is actually a really good slide to start with here. We walk trails. We perform ceremonies, we forage for shellfish and berries, and from time to time, community members will come in and demonstrate traditional practice such as plucking a duck, tanning a deer, and explaining the importance of keeping our waters clean. Next slide. And students learn all about traditional plants that our ancestors use and practice harvesting. Students also learn the importance of giving back to their community. Our summertime is spent mostly outdoors. So like I've been outdoors this whole past week. We've been traveling all up and down Cape Cod. You know, it's so important that we were outside because being in the classroom, like we're only there in the winter because we'd be inside our homes traditionally. So during the fall, the spring, the summer, we're outdoors and we're moving and grooving. Next slide, please. We also have our own gardens around our school. We also help in our, community gardens. They grow the same sort of plants that their ancestors would grow: corn, beans, squash, cucumbers, strawberries. Lettuces are kind of new, onions, and well, we had onions, but like carrots, yeah, like we just kind of grow them because they grow quick. But we also talk about what came from this land and what and how they came to our land. Like, there's ceremony and there's creation stories on how corn came to be, how squash came to be, and how bean came here. And so we teach that to our students so that they understand, these things are all sacred. Next slide, please. So yeah, they spend most of their time inside the classroom, and like I said, we go out and we do our best to forage. This young girl has a whole hand of grapes that grows right behind our community banner, and it's important that our students know where to continue to collect these things. I'm 38. I'll be 39. And a lot of the places where I used to go and collect and forage like different types of berries or medicinal plants, I no longer can because of, especially in Mashpee, there was a huge boom in development and it's so funny because you'll see like where Roach Brothers were, they had to plant all these indigenous plants. And then they were getting mad that all of us were showing up in the parking lot to pick these berries that we've been picking for a long time. So then they removed them. In our American government, the way that they've always controlled us is by how we eat and how we access our food sources. So when we talk about having our Aboriginal rights and practicing them, I tell my students that it's still important that we do this. It's still important that we go down and we collect shellfish or we go fishing. The other day, my students and we were walking to a place that my great-grandmother used to access traditional medicines and shellfish. And while we were walking there, it's a road, it's a town road, a lady came out of her house and started yelling at the kids saying, "You don't belong here." And my students were like, "What is she talking?" I'm like, "We're not going to listen and we're going to keep doing what we're doing." So children are experiencing this, this isn't yours. And it's like, no, it is. And it's, some people don't realize that it's a federal offense to stop us from gathering shellfish or, stop us from our Aboriginal ways of collecting food, and that it's actually a federal offense. So I tell the kids, I'm like, don't worry, you're with Miss Tia, we're going to keep it moving. Next slide, please. So yeah, our school, we definitely have our Montessori stuff where they're working really hard. We travel a lot to the beach. These guys know how to shellfish and get them out there. When they collect quahogs or anything, we try to do our best to make sure that our elders are fed. These are practices that have happened time immemorial, and we want to make sure that our students are able to continue those practices. I have a lot of pictures. Next slide, please. And this is inside of our classroom. So at our school, we have one classroom that is ages 3 through 6. And then we have a second classroom, which is our elementary classroom, which is ages 6 to 9. So we have the majority of our kids that start in our younger house. And then some of our families, they go to the public school, which is fine. And some of our families want to stay because we offer something different than the public school. We're giving, those traditional teachings that a lot of our parents wish that they had. Or I know I remember one time one of the kids' parents came to me and was like, I never was taught that. And the fact that my kid now knows this and is teaching me, I have to humble myself. And, it, as time keeps going on and as we, as land is getting taken from us, people start to lose their identity. And Weetumuw School, what we are trying to do is make sure that our children have their identity, that the children have their cultural practices, that they can use their language in a space where it's love. Personally, me, my grandfather went to Sebago D residential school. And I think about my grandfather's journey in a residential school and how he was debased, he was abused and harmed as a child. And I think about all the children that go to residential schools and why it's so important that in our tribal school that we're building space for love. We're building space for understanding and being support, not only to our children, but to our tribal families. Next slide, please. And yeah, these, like I said, these guys are moving and grooving. We visit a lot of different types of water spaces too. We go to the bay, we go to estuaries, we go to salt marshes. These guys were super happy about making origami. Next slide, please. But like I said earlier, it's really important too that they understand like how our ancestors live. We visit a WICU that was built at the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribal Museum. And is kept up by one of our tribal members there. So they get to see how their ancestors live. We talk about like how warm our houses were. We talk about all the natural materials that our houses were made from, and that how now, because of, you know, colonization and how we don't have, and because of things like deforestation, we have a hard time to rebuilding these houses that our ancestors have been building for eons. So you know, I know for us, like when we try to get bark to build these homes, we actually have to go down south to Maryland and places like that are so far from us. And then we have to go and ask these communities too, like, hey, we need bark. Is it okay if we take bark from your community? Because we just don't have the trees here. And the trees aren't big enough for us to build our homes with. And peeling bark is no joke. Whew. A lot of the men in our communities who peel bark. My husband went on one bark trip and he was like, oh my gosh, it was rough. And then we also, like, you know, as the seasons come and go, one of our big things is that we make sure that students have the access to herring. You know, we do go to different rivers and we do catch herring, and students bring herring to their their elders, and we also use some of that herring for our gardens. But you know, they've also started to learn the smoking process of herring. When our students aren't learning these things, and when you have generations missing, that's traditional cultural knowledges that are dying. And we are doing our best to not only preserve our language, but preserve our culture too. By preserving our language and culture, we preserve our land and we preserve our people. Next slide, please. So like, you know, very different from a public school. You know, most kids that do like, they dissect animals, they're doing it in 9th grade. We're doing it right 1st through 3rd grade. So our first animal that we're looking at is herring. So we talk about how, you know, we process herring, and these guys were hilarious because like some of them, because they don't, like, you know, a lot of our families don't have, I'm not gonna say don't have access, but like have been paused in doing these traditional acts of, you know, like smoking herring or eating herring. You know, a lot of them eat chicken nuggets. So it's really important for our school, that they also know what these things taste like, so that they can understand, like, this is like the essence of who we are. We give thanks for the herring that come back. They feed us in so many different ways. They're our first like big feast of the new year. And these guys were like, whoa. A lot of them were like, I don't know, I like it. But I'm like, hey, your ancestors are happy that you're just trying it. Next slide, please. Yeah, and these guys all checking out at the river, having a good time. And one of our big things too is like, even though in the winter we're inside, we really try to be outdoors as much as possible. We believe that, like, you know, it's not so much of a belief, it's just how all of our children were raised. We were always outdoors. So these guys, we tell our parents, like, make sure you pack them with everything that they need for sun, snow, rain, or shine. Next slide, please. And we also, so some of the things that I do is that I'm connected with some of my family that live in Maine. And one of the things that we do is that we try to like barter and share certain things. So like I kind of try to send quahog shells up to my family in Maine, and they send back sweetgrass. So the students at Weetumuw School get to use these medicines, and they actually build, like, you know, braid all these sweetgrass braids. And at the end of our end of school year, like big kind of celebration, they hand out the sweetgrass braids to the people that have come into our school to teach lessons. So like if somebody came and was like, hey, I'm just giving you this fish so that you can have the kids eat it, they're getting a sweetgrass braid. If we've had anyone that said, hey, let me tell you about some of these plants, they're getting a sweetgrass braid. Next slide, please. We also partner with a lot of our different programs within the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. So recently we've been visiting with the Natural Resource Department, and they've taken our students out. We're actually at South Cape Beach. And so being outdoors isn't like, oh, we're just going to the beach. We also talk about things that are really important, like coastal erosion. So these guys walked with our NRD department, and they were talking about the importance of beach grass, the importance of like, they actually have to keep rebuilding. I don't know if anyone's familiar with South Cape Beach and Mashpee, but like every year from storms and whatever, they got to keep rebuilding the beach. And so like the young man that's kind of like standing there with a gray sweatshirt, his job is to plant a lot of the beach grass, and he's like really, really keen on how to do that. And we were talking about, also getting the children involved in doing that so that they understand that they're saving their beach. Next slide, please. And I mean, these guys are just like, these guys love being outside and they love learning from their tribal community members. The other day when we went to the ocean, we saw 4 seals in the water, and I've never really seen any seals on down there, but I'm not saying that they're not there. But to me, I'm like, 4 seals, that's a lot of seals. Whoa. And I've had a couple of talks with some of my family members when we were talking about like, our ancestors used to hunt seal. Seal was really important. Their fur was really important for a lot of our winter gear. And that's something that, especially during like IFA, where, they're showing images of Indigenous people hunting seals and trying to, make us feel like we're, like the way that we access our food is not right because we didn't go to Stop and Shop and get a package of hamburger meat. That is, hurting our traditional ways of being. So we're telling students, like our ancestors didn't just like, yeah, seals are cute, but they're also a food source that our ancestors depended on, same as whales and other things that we no longer hunt because it's kind of taboo now. So I call my students my friends, but they're like, oh, man, Miss Tia, I wonder what like a whale would taste like. And I'm like, I don't know. Not like McDonald's though. Next slide, please. And like I said, these guys are into collection. So not only when we go to the beach, they're collecting a lot of different things. And as much as they're trying to find the beauty in what washes ashore, we're also identifying different types of stones. Like, why does this stone have black in it? Why does this stone all white? Well, why is this stone so smooth? And then we're also identifying different types of shellfish. Next slide, please. And this is one of the spots that I was talking about. It's Punkhorn Point. And in Mashpee, they were trying to, like, there's a man that owns this island and he wanted to build a bridge over it. And we had to, I know in Mashpee, we had to go and fight for that because we're like, we can't have a bridge over here because that affects all our fishing. And, all these houses that are, and I don't know if you guys have seen like the New York Times article where Mr. Buddy Pocknett was talking about how in our river, like there's just all this black sludge underneath. Like how can we continue to eat from here when we know that our waters are polluted? When our waters are polluted, when our land is polluted, we're poisoning our people, and not just our people, all people that live on this land. So, this is for me, like coming to this spot is a spot that was a camp that my dad's family always camped at, Punkhorn Point. And this is an area where my great grandmother gathered medicines and went shell fishing. And, I share those stories with my students, and they talk about, well, yeah, I come here too. And do you know over in this corner, there's asparagus? I'm like, there is asparagus and you can pick that and you can eat that. Next slide, please. And these guys are just natural scientists. When they're outdoors and they're in their homeland, there's a lot of curiosity. These guys went and collected all these little crabs. And we learned something new this year, that the green crabs are an invasive crab species. And so, you know, we were talking about it with our natural resource department. Like, what do we do? Like, how is it harmful? Does it hurt other seafood? Like, does it, you know, hurt the other crabs that are in the area? Like, and he was talking about like how there's like not really anything that eats them. So like they're just overpopulating. Next slide. Yeah. And then one of these guys found like a super cool moon jellyfish in the water and they're like, check it out. Super. So this is our elementary class. Our elementary class gets to do a lot more exploring because like the little ones, they're still little and we like to take them out, but like at the same time, like, you know, for my littles, like a good mile hike for them is a lot. My older kids can hike anywhere from 3 to 4 miles and without complaints, and they got their snacks and they're good. But my littles, they're like, it's time for a nap, Miss Tia. Next slide, please. It's and one of the things that we do too is like we're also checking out like what other animals are on the land. One of my students here, she was the first one to point out that she's like, Miss Tia, look, there's deer tracks and they come all the way down to the ocean. And, you know, this is so cool. I've never seen deer tracks at the beach. I'm like, yeah, well, you know, deer can also swim. And then they were like, what? Next slide. And here's my littles. So my littles are also checking out the herring run this year. They're really teeny tiny. We have to make sure that they don't fall over into the river. And these guys, you know, sometimes we have dads or uncles that come, they'll catch the fish and they'll get to see it. But these guys are kind of little to be going by the Mashpee River Run. Usually a lot of them will return with their moms and dads and can get into the river. Next slide, please. And with our littles, like we were talking about before, like it's really important that they also understand, like we give them little bits of land and earth so that they can understand the importance as they move bigger. So with us always, it's going from the concrete to the abstract. So starting with like, you know, a planter box and talking about how this is land. And then as they get older, they start to understand, well, you know, this is a little box of land, but this is all land. And there are so many different plants, and every plant on our land is vital. And sometimes there's certain plants that choke out the real, like that plants that have been here for a long time. And how do we handle that? How do we make sure that our medicines are still here? Next slide, please. And yeah, these little guys were so excited. They took, I don't know if you know, this big bush, like they just cleared out that whole planter box. They felt so proud, super excited. Next slide, please. And like I said, we travel everywhere. These guys found this giant sand hill. They were running up it. But, you know, I had to tell my students, like, we have to be very careful in the woods because, you know, one of the things is that some people aren't aware of is that there's actually quicksand. And, you know, I tell my students, like, we have to be careful where we walk. We have to pay attention to the environment around us. And, you know, this is right by like the big bogs. And, you know, we also talk about too, like how the Otis Air Force Base has impacted the lands that even in Mashpee, like where we had hunting and fishing and all sorts of things. My dad used to tell me about how he used to can go on Otis Air Force Base and they could hunt, and then they took that away. And, you know, for a lot of the men, like that was like something they got to do, and now they can't. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then this is just kind of like a full season view. Spring, we're going out. We have like these guys are out in the snow. My friend Patakwahan here is trying to roll up an amazing snowman base. He got it pretty big. And then my little friend here where she was picking up an old clam. Next slide. And then again, we're working, my little friends here, the preschool classroom, working with the natural resource department to plant traditional plants at the back of our tribal community building. One of the things is like we're trying to build pollinator gardens, but not just like any pollinator garden, you know, pollinator plants that are, you know, indigenous to these lands. Next slide, or I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much to all three of you. That was really, really wonderful and very informative. I know I definitely learned a ton. So before we open to a short Q&A, I'm first going to put a link tree in the chat. I pulled this together with a bunch of resources, links where you can donate. For example, the Weetumuw School is on there, and so is the Herring Pond website, and just a lot of really, really good information. So I'm gonna quickly turn it over to Claire Carl Miller, and they're gonna talk about the Massachusetts Indigenous legislative agenda.
Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. Good to be here tonight. I am Claire Carl, they, them, with UU Mass Action, part of the MA Indigenous Legislative Agenda, which is a coalition of lots of groups. You can see the full list. Not every, don't have logos for everyone, unfortunately. And this coalition is working to pass 5 bills through the State House to become law. 3 of these bills are in relationship to our public schools. I don't know how you can't walk away from Tia's presentation and just feel like, our schools, our young people are so important. So we have a bill about improving educational outcomes for Native youth, about prohibiting Native American mascots, and about having real curriculum in Massachusetts public schools that really teaches about Native American culture and celebrates it. And then the last 2 bills, those are the 3 public school bills, and then we have protecting Native American heritage, so closing loopholes in federal laws that allow Native objects to still be held at institutions as if they're assets. And lastly, to establish Indigenous Peoples Day statewide. May it be so. So these are the 5 bills. Hopefully you've heard of them before. And the thing I want to do real quick is to invite you to a day of action on Monday. The goal of this day is to get a lot of co-sponsors for these 5 bills. We need all the legislators to understand how important they are, co-sponsor these bills. So we'll be kicking off at 11 o'clock in front of the State House steps. We will break into teams and then we will go into the State House to visit each office, give them a copy of the fact sheet and an invitation. We're having a legislator briefing where legislators can hear directly from Indigenous people, leaders in the Commonwealth about these bills. So really great opportunity for them to really wrap their heads around these if they haven't. So you are invited to come volunteer, come to the briefing, but then also I've put in the chat the link to invite your legislator to go to the briefing. So even if you cannot get to Boston at 11 o'clock on Monday, it's your legislator's job to be in Boston on Monday. So get their butts over to room 428. You can use that link I put in the chat to invite them. And I will pass it back to you, Grace.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have a couple minutes left. So if you have your questions, please put them down in the chat. We're gonna keep everyone muted. I'm just gonna read them out. But I see there was one that was asking Tia how families are contributors to the school.
Yeah, so we really want our families to be a part of it because, when we talk about, being in school, just in general, it's really important that students and family are connected. Like I tell my family's we're kind of co-parenting. And it's really important that you are there too. I always try to make sure that our parents are, understood that this is also a space for them too.
Great. Right, any others? Yes, I had a question for Melissa. I was wondering if you sort of what I know back a few months ago, the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe was granted state recognition. So I just wanted to know a little bit about sort of what this means to you as chairwoman about like what this means for reparations. Just in general.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, we know all too well, and I learned very quickly on when I started my tenure as chairwoman that without some formal recognition, your name is mud, is how I feel. I wasn't taken very seriously in many spaces. I think the people that knew us knew that the Herring Pond Wampanoag people have been here since time immemorial. Those that didn't, you met with resistance. And if you weren't included in the Executive Order 126 from the 70s, then we weren't able to apply for certain types of funding. And we weren't technically considered a tribe. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts sadly has no state recognized tribes, honestly, because there is no legislative process, which is something we're working on and I'm going to advocate for in the future. This was a really important big, but really it was a small step in a way, right? Because we already knew we were a tribe, but having the governor reaffirm it and have that be official, it's pretty amazing because we're taken more seriously by a lot of people, and now we're able to assert those rights to the land more so now than ever, because now the governor has asked her, has ordered her departments to now they must consult with the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe on matters that affect the tribe. So Hedges Pond, when that all first happened, we weren't recognized yet, right? When we started, I know when Catherine and the Land and Water Coalition started their really awesome, important work was, before COVID, right? When this all sand and gravel work started, and we weren't recognized then, so we weren't taken seriously. And now they have to take us seriously. So next, so federal recognition is the ultimate goal, but that's a long way for us. It's a lot of funds and a lot of resources that we currently don't have, but we'll hope to get there one day. So thank you. That was a great question.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right. I'm not seeing any more questions.
Jeffrey had his hand up, I think. Jeffrey Barkdell. Well, yeah, it's up. His hand's up.
First off, it's Barkdole. You're gonna pronounce my last name right.
I
Do
thought
it
to say
quickly.
it. I was hoping I got it right, Jeffrey.
No problem. No problem. Secondly, I did come up with an idea for. I wanted to know what you think of it in the form of a question. Trying to pronounce it in the form of a question. Should it be made illegal for anyone to acquire Native American land without, one, the tribe leader's permission, two, pays how much the land is correctly worth, and three, create a legal contract that can allow the native tribe leaders to terminate the contract if the buyer violates any of the terms in the contract. I'm just hoping that, for the future of the Native Americans, I was hoping something like this could help. What do you think of the idea?
I'll take a swing at that if it's okay. So Jeffrey, I mean, I think it's really it's really great to recommend, and I think all of those things in some way are sort of represented already with some of the NAGPRA laws. But again, as I had just mentioned, Herring Pond being a state recognized tribe, we don't qualify for some of the federal protections that our sister tribes do that have reached federal recognition. So in many cases, this is something, a lot of the lands are already gone, lost, stolen, or sold off. So to get them back, sure. I mean, I think it would be a great idea moving forward if the state would, give us permission, and we had to have, they had to have our permission to sell off any of the land. Wouldn't that be amazing, right? And to have a legal contract. I'm also a real estate agent, so would love to get some contracts going with my realtor, right, to get some of the land back. So I think it's they're great suggestions, and some of them in some ways are already in place, Jeffrey. But yeah, I like your thought there. So if somebody else wants to jump on that. please do.
All right, we're just past 8, so we're gonna have to wrap it up. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I will send out the link tree.
Grace, I think there's time for,
Yes.
there's a very important question there that I wouldn't want it to be missed.
Oh, sorry.
As a settler on these lands,
Oh, yes. Sorry.
I think we can extend for a few minutes.
Yeah, if that's okay. Yeah, we have, this is a really good question. So, as a settler on these lands, how can I learn what are the inherent rights of Indigenous people regarding access to land and water so I can honor those rights? Unfortunately, I don't know these.
A good question. I mean, there's really no one place where the Commonwealth really tells you that, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? Again, that's another really great suggestion. But I mean, it's really, it amounts to, you can always, I always tell folks that, the best way you can support the tribe is to educate yourself on the tribe itself. So in the community that you live in or wherever you reside, try to find out who the tribe is in that region and maybe get to know their history, and then you can seek out maybe some of the inherent rights of Indigenous people on sites like the UNDRIP is a good place to go. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Of course, it's not a law here in the United States, but it was represented by back in 2010. The United States did affirm it. So I mean, it's each tribe is different as well. It's another thing to remember. All tribes are unique and sovereignty doesn't look the same for each one. So it's just really important to maybe research who's in your region and then, seek out them and find out. Then you can learn more.
Great. And then Nancy, I think you had a question, and then you want to wrap it up?
No, I won't carry on with my question, but I can address that to Melissa separately. But I think we're going to conclude now, and we want to thank our incredibly wonderful speakers here. Just an amazing presentation, very inspiring, and I hope activating for people. I also want to thank our moderator, Grace, our student intern who did a terrific job, and Craig Simpson, who's in the background there, but is the chair of our Indigenous Solidarity Committee. I want to let folks know that coming up, hopefully by the summer, will be another webinar in this series on Black reparations, and obviously very connected in terms of every issue that was talked about today. So stay tuned for that, and thank you all for coming. And maybe a goodbye in the language that Pia is teaching. What's our say it again?
Pishkananamo.
Pishkananamo. Oops, I need a little help, but thank